Spy Family, the show that kicked the spring season's ass, is undoubtedly the biggest show of the year so far, and I have no doubt this show will stay at the forefront of our minds until its much anticipated return in October, when we'll see if it can hold its own against Chainsaw Man. The Forger family has managed to carve out their own space within the vast array of familial bonds seen in anime over the years, but what's more notable than their communal charm and Anya's unyielding ability to be the cutest thing we've all seen since Fat Pikachu is, the Forgers have a lot of nice furniture. End tables, a really nice credenza, and this stylish coffee table, for example. There's a lot going on here, but if there's anything from the show we all want besides the Mizusawa Matsuri beanie collection, Citrus fans will know what I'm talking about, it's Anya's footstool. So I got a bandsaw and a beam of Douglas fir for this episode of Animokusai. There's nothing special about the wood selection for this build. I just picked up the only beam I could find that wasn't treated. The first thing I'm gonna do is get it planed down so that I can fit in the bandsaw and see if any of these knots come out. It's going to be important to keep this as square as possible, so I'll be paying attention as I flip this piece and continue to pass it through. One of the knots exploded, which is great, and I've got some cracks to work around, but now that the beam has been resized, I'm ready to make the jig for the cabriole style legs. In this scene from the first episode, we find out that Anya is 4 or 5 years old, but she lies and tells Lloyd she's 6 in order to increase her chance of getting adopted, as the school she'll be entering requires the applicants to be at least that age. I'm gonna split the difference here and go with 5, and according to Hatena blog, the average height of a Japanese 5-year-old is 42 inches, so I'm gonna make the legs 10.5 inches, which should put the top of the footstool right around her knees as seen in the show. The sides of the jig are sized to the beam and the template is prepared and transferred. The two sides are joined together and cut at the same time for consistency. I'm going to use super glue to hold the jig together until I can get the screws and nails in. Super glue is an absolute must in the shop when you really need that third hand to hold something together when it can't really conveniently be clamped. It will be hard to see on screen, but thumbtacks make really good pilot holes for tack nails, and I recommend doing this whenever you can. After one more cut, our jig is done and I can start cutting the stock from my legs. I'll be orienting the wood so that the knots will be cut out during the shaping process. And each leg will be secured with a single screw in the top so it doesn't move. I'm going to take my time and get both sides cut out as neatly as I can by doing cross cuts and then following the jig. After that, the piece is flipped 90 degrees and the process is repeated, which gives us this. Not great, but I'll see how it shapes out from here, and this is good practice for the next 3. With all the legs roughed out, they are attached onto a board with super glue for the shaping process and are arranged as they will be attached to the final build for the best consistency. I didn't have a drum sander, and this was the best solution I could think of.
First, discombobulate. Update, discombobulate.
I moved to the rasp after the orbital sander, but progress was still slow, so here's a cheap alternative for a drum sander if you don't have one. The cordless drill will overheat if you keep it on for too long, so I recommend doing this in 5 to 8 minute segments, give or take. And after a week or so of sanding out these ridiculous cuts, the legs are finally reaching a workable state, so I cut out the stock for the side panels, dodging all the knots possible along the way. The boards are ripped down the center, giving me one panel for each side, and will be arranged with the grain facing this way since it mirrors the angle of the legs, which seems like a woodworky way to go about this to me. But before shaping the panels, a template is made for the curved design. The legs are arranged for the best consistency and will be my guide for where the panel is joined. One side is sketched out, cut out, then folded over and traced onto the other, where it can then be cut out and looks like this. At this point, I went ahead and cut about a 1/2 inch off the legs because
fuck me, the fuck!
but I like the more stout look, and knowing how stubby Anya's legs are, I think this is for the best. Okay, back to the template. After transferring my leg curves onto the panels, I can use the template to work out where the pinholes will go for the joinery. A heat-treated board is prepared for the supports, and with everything marked out, 3 progressively larger bits are taped off to the desired length, and each hole is drilled from smallest to largest to prevent tear out. Just kidding, I got a lot of tear out because God's been dead for a very long time, but that's okay because after assembly, none of this will be visible. But before we do any pinning, I'm going to get the curves and bevels roughed out for the sides, a little shaping on the wheel, and looking good. Now we can work on the pinning. A slight bevel on the edge will help them slide in better, and putting them in the drill like this creates these little grooves to help the glue spread out. You can also cut them like this to help them pinch if they need to, so I'll make a few of them. Now we can move on to assembly. I'd love to say that everything fit together like a Lego set, but during the test fitting, I discovered several issues. My supports are too long, so I'll have to take a bit off, and one of the side panels didn't line up because I'm an idiot. I also chipped it pretty good, and it's too flat among other things. After reshaping the curve, the miscuts are marked out for chiseling. I'll carefully cut out these 2 areas and add more wood with the grain going in the same direction to be sanded to form later. This was preferable to reshaping the legs to compensate for the bad cuts. To fix my issue with the overall fit, I'm going to assemble everything but the looser fitting side and let that dry. Then I'll see what needs to be altered to make this go together properly. This side will be all flex pins to make it easier. It's a good thing I checked this before the glue dried because my supports did not need to be cut down, so I shortened the sides, which weren't the same length to begin with, and that created more problems, so they need to be remade, which is fine because this wasn't going to look good anyway, and that's just ridiculous. After the dried glue is poorly chiseled and somewhat competently sanded off, I can fit my new pieces, and no matter what I do, these holes just aren't lining up. I think I got too much drifting with the drill, so the 2 sides are joined together and my new pieces are glued into place. Certainly not preferred, but 12 out of 16 pins isn't bad. I noticed while shaping these that there wasn't going to be much of an edge for the top to rest on this side, so more wood is added. With that all starting to shape up, I'll add the extra supports and start on the top. For that, a piece of oak is sawn down the center and book matched for a mirrored grain pattern. The boards are glued and clamped overnight and can then be planed flat. Before putting on the top, I need to make sure my base is as flat as possible, and this is already looking promising, but I have a lot of mistakes to consider, and it's nothing a little 50 can't handle. With all that prepared, a flat board is waxed down to prevent any glue from sticking, and the piece is placed upside down with as much weight as I could find placed on top. The shims have been added to help everything meet up a bit more perfectly, and it will sit like this for no less than 24 hours. Now that the glue has bonded, the top needs to be sanded flush with the body, and after a couple hours, it's finally starting to blend in, so I'll flip it over and work on the other side. My patchwork needed cleaned up because it looked really bad, and I'm going to give what I'll refer to as the handles a nice round over. We see Anya grab it right here in the show, so this part has to feel good. More glue is applied where necessary, and finally I'll sign via wood burning, of course. I had a couple of stains to test for this, and I think the provincial looks pretty accurate, so I'll go with that, and wow, look at this thing. The oak top matched really well with the Douglas fir on the sides, and the legs ended up looking like a completely different wood. I'm not sure if I have the cut or the grain direction to thank for that, but it looks cool and I consider it a welcome surprise. A few coats of spray sealer and this thing is done. So, why spend an entire month on a mundane object that only appears in season 1 twice? Because Anya is great, and someone had to pull this from the show so we could all see what it would actually look like. Like what I did with Taiga's Boken in this video that you should check out. And if you thought that this video was waku waku, then subscribe to the channel for more and stay tuned for more builds from your favorite anime and video games.